The spotlight was so much hotter than I'd imagined. I stood barely breathing, palms slippery around the battered remote, the old pain in my left knee whispering as I shifted my weight. It wasn't the crowd that undid me, not even the serried ranks of investors in their immaculate blazers and unreadable eyes. It was the silence, dense and expectant, stretching just too long. My deck flickered onto the screen behind me. DeltaCell's smart adaptive regeneration. I heard the slide clicker's hollow clack echo through Lisbon's buzzing conference hall. I gulped. Speak, I told myself. Give them what you believe. The first lines crawled from my mouth. Regenerative medicine isn't just for the future. With adaptive cell scaffolding and AI-driven control, we can target. An investor coughed. My dad up in the second row mouthed a thin line. Tio Manuel laughed quietly, the sound dragging across my skin like sandpaper. I pushed onward. Stem cell layers, auto-modulating protein expression, wearable diagnostic cuffs for microinjury repair, my passion tangling in technicalities. The words, so smooth and strident last night in my cramped Bairo alto flat, escaped me like startled geckos. Questions jaunted out fast and sharp. You're saying you'll program cells like we program apps? A skeptical tilt of a white-bearded chin. Isn't that science fiction? Louder a frown. You don't even have seed backing. Why should we believe Sophia? Believe, the word landed raw, cracking open every hidden bruise I'd earned in this city. Because it works, I rasped, voice half swallowed. In early trials there were. An old woman, one of our local angel investors, whose money hung only for the blessed, sighed pointedly and dipped her head to scribble notes. Every face told me I was ridiculous, the dreamer from nowhere, daughter of Rui, granddaughter of broken fishermen. This city didn't want more wild ventures. They wanted restaurants, startups that made better wine recommendations, not a girl in battered shoes talking about AI-altered skin tissue. When I left the stage, the applause was thin, dying almost instantly. I didn't meet anyone's eyes. Dad was already glowering at his phone. My mother, in her careful blue dress, patted my arm with a smile so brittle it hurt to see. As soon as my bag hit my shoulder, Tio Manuel blocked my path. Sophia, you know I love you, Menina, but avec toda confianza, you need to think about something solid, not this dream. Teaching, maybe, or business school. He winked, his teeth aflash in dark skin. Write code for ChatGPT like those Brazilian guys. Lisboa, she's not kind to people who fly so high soar. My throat closed. I could have snapped, but the words stayed trapped. I nodded, blinking hard. Tonight my city was all tile and salt, air and ridicule. In the taxi home, the driver kept glancing at me in the mirror. I tried to fade into the Lisbon dusk, swallowing disappointment, fear burning like a cheap aguardent in my gut. The weeks blurred. My previous employer, an immunology lab, cut my contract. Too risky, too ambitious. Old friends drifted back to Porto or morphed into slick marketing roles I recognized from LinkedIn posts but not from memory. Even my grandmother, hunched in her Sal Vicent kitchen, pressed dosed a tomate into my hands and murmured, "Better to keep your head down, Sophia. We don't want another scandal." I started to dwindle. Small tasks, buying groceries, logging data, answering my own emails grew heavy. My project bent under the weight of my family's derision, of anonymous rejection emails, of funding that retreated like rain washing away Pombeline stone. Lisbon, all orange roofs and yellow trams, felt like a city fraying at its edges. Most nights I retreated to my borrowed flat. Sometimes I'd pace the kitchen, blue tiles cold beneath my feet, whispering the sentences I wished I'd said. To the mirror, to Dad, to myself. Other times I opened the battered delta cell samples in my fridge and stared at each labeled test tube: Theta 3, myocyte scaffold, Alpha 7. Glionet proto, each one held the possibility of everything I'd worked for. I muttered technical fixes, trying to banish the ringing laughter of my uncle from that day in the conference hall. But some nights, rare, hollowed-out ones, I'd walk along the Tagus, past vendors roasting castanhas, through Alfama's labyrinth of voices and faint guitars. Beyond the city buzz, water lapped against stone. I'd imagine my tiny, trembling hope carried out to the estuary, lost and then maybe finding its way back, battered but still alive. I joined online communities. A message board for deep learning in cell biology let me show early simulation results. No one called me ridiculous there. A Stanford grad DM'd, "Have you tried running a reinforcement layer with immune detection feedback?" Another PhD from Delhi wanted to send yeast cultures. Hope flickered tiny electronic miles away, but it was real and it listened. That winter, Lisbon's rain was a constant percussion on my windows. Each dawn I willed myself from bed, legs aching, and typed code, ran models. Injected, waited, logged. After 24 failed cultures, one sample theta-3, my favorite, showed a data spike, not perfect, but proof. I only let myself feel relief for a moment. I knew by then that hope was dangerous. It could vanish in the next trial, gone with the next error code, the next look of pity from my father. Money ran tight. My parents shook their heads but sometimes left sardines and frozen pow in my mailbox. My phone buzzed with bills and rejection emails. Still, I scraped together spare time from odd jobs, cleaning labs, teaching coding to high schoolers, and spent every spare cent on reagents. Every bit of kindness was a gift hung with strings. When I showed the first good data to my cousin in Circumflex, she smiled sorrowfully. "It's very smart, Sophia, but nobody gets out with this. Maybe you should think about coming with us to Switzerland." I could hear the hurt behind her words. She wanted to save me from myself. But what she couldn't feel was the spark inside, growing brighter each time I turned code into a living, regenerating cell strand. If I quit now, that spark would die and no one would remember it ever existed. Then came a morning when I sat up at 3 a.m., sheets tangled around my knees, and saw it. The data was clear as salt. The cell scaffolding, with the right neural net tweaks, had responded to simulated damage by rebuilding damaged tissues. The early model had worked. It was a small victory, laughably so in the grand scheme of things, but it was proof. I cried, messy and animal, sobs echoing into my battered pillow. I wrote up the results for a minor journal, bracing for dismissal. It was accepted. The impact was small, but a postdoc in Boston quoted me and DM'd. "Where's your code hosted? Let's replicate." Slowly, imperceptibly, I felt myself become more than a local joke. I learned to ignore my uncle's texts, my father's grim silences. I learned to speak in English as much as in Portuguese, if only online. In the years that followed, progress was slow, then sudden. First, a small American startup offered to host me for a short fellowship. I leaped at it despite my mother's tears and my father's refusal to meet my eyes the night before I left. In New York, I shared cramped lodgings with 4 other broke young scientists, survived on cheap bagels, and sat in a windowless lab running protocols for weeks straight. But the resources, instead of pleading for grant money, I had cell incubators, data clouds, an AI team willing to listen when I spoke. In the thick muddle of work and sleeplessness, DeltaCell's core model became more elegant, more robust. A patent followed, then interest from a medical device startup in Cambridge. A hospital in New Jersey ran a small, rigorous trial. The data returned, not a miracle but efficacy, safety. Results that couldn't be laughed off or brushed aside. A journalist from Wired interviewed me. She called me the Lisbon native, changing biotech one line of code at a time. My old mentor from the immunology lab sent a one-line email. "You did it, Soph." I could barely hold the enormity of it in my chest, but every advance, every milestone felt slightly unreal. Across an ocean, Lisbon remained, the city where every tile was a story, every glance a reckoning. My parents were aging. My cousin in Circumflex sent me WhatsApps filled with photos of her children in the Alfama Park, while noise from the cafes thrummed in the background. Tio Manuel, never one for long calls, left a gruff voicemail. "Congrats, Menina, heard something good in the papers." I dreamed I was standing at the edge of the Rossio Square, the pigeons swirling around my feet, and everyone was watching, but I was invisible. It took another 2 years to finish the full DeltaCell suite. A smart patch system, backed by adaptive learning, able to monitor wounds, regulate the healing process, and minimize scarring, fusing AI precision with the delicacy of living tissue. Funding surged, the US team pushed me, London hospitals started pilot programs. "Come show it at home," my co-founder urged, grinning. "Lisbon's a rising tech hub, right?" The old dread, almost nostalgia, almost bruise, returned. Had it really been so long? I flew back in late spring. The city was gold and blue, perfumed with jacaranda and roasting chestnuts. The streets felt the same and yet not. Brighter, buzzing with new tourists and sharper cars, but the undercurrent of skepticism was familiar. My mother met me at the airport, eyes dampened with pride. My father, thinner, slower, met my gaze for only a fraction of a second before hugging me hard and sudden. The launch was set at the new biotech hub down by the river. It was, in every way, the mirror opposite of my first pitch, light-filled, breathlessly modern, glass walls framing the sparkling Tagus. My face was on the digital banners. Sophia Vale, a Deltacell founder, returns home. My cousin brought her boys. Even Tio Manuel showed up, shoes buffed, arms folded tight. I stood backstage clutching the prototype. My hands shook. I was terrified they'd see through me, see even now, the flinching child under the veneer of confidence. The crowd was thick with old faces, media, government officials, investors both local and from abroad. The families of patients who'd enrolled in the hospital trials sat up front. I walked out and instinctively scanned for my family. There they were, my mother squeezed between my father and Tio Manuel, both of whom radiated a grimness only Portuguese men could manage. I remembered my uncle's words echoing, write code like those Brazilian guys, as if ambition was a kind of arrogance. Olá, I said, voice just holding. 3 years ago on a stage not far from here I was laughed at. A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience. It hurt, I said, and the honesty rolled out effortlessly, but it hurt more to think we might never try. I lifted the Deltacell patch into the light, the surface gleaming silver, delicate as a laurel leaf. This isn't just a dream anymore, it's healed 5 patients so far, and today here we want to heal more. There was a moment when doubt hummed in the air, a tangible skepticism you could smell, pungent as burning oil. I called up Dr. Torres, head of the Santa Maria Hospital trial. He explained simply that they'd treated a boy, Joe, age 14, with a chronic leg wound from diabetes. Months of failed healing, risk of amputation looming. I gestured to the side of the stage. Joe's mother walked out holding his hand. He walked shy but upright. A photo flashed behind us, his wounded leg, angry and raw. Now a trim scar, pale and healthy, tears rolled down his mother's cheek. Obrigada, she whispered, gripping my hand. Something invisible trembled, then broke. A sound rose from the audience, not quite applause at first, but a soft gasp of disbelief melting into joy. Tio Manuel's mouth was slack, his folded arms falling away. My father, eyes wet, tried and failed not to cry. The media questions came thick and fast. The investors tried to push forward, all eager warmth now. My mind drifted above the room, out over the city. I was here in my Lisbon, no longer a punchline, or at least not just a punchline. The fear, ever present, receded till only defiance and an odd, fragile pride remained. Afterward, the crowd pressed close. Officials from the ministry, old friends from university, children from the neighborhood who'd heard stories about the mad scientist from the Bairro. Innie Circumflex crushed me in a hug, her boys sprawling around my knees. My mother pressed her fingers to my cheek, but I sought out my family. My father straightened his tie, eyes brimming with a stubborn, unfamiliar tenderness. You didn't listen, Philher. Good for you. Tio Manuel looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, the faintest smile shaping his lined face. He pulled something from his pocket, an old, battered photo of him and my father as boys on the river, all elbows and hope, bodies lean from work. You went further than we ever dared, he said. Don't forget us when you go higher. I gripped the photo in my hand, feeling the warmth of Lisbon's sunset outside the glass walls. The city was still itself. All skeptical faces, sharp tongues, and love hidden behind stubbornness. But I walked outside into the evening, the pulse of the crowd at my back, and felt, finally, not just the sting of rejection, but the sweetness of return. As night sparkled on the river, the tram bells chimed in the distance. I breathed in the city's air full of memory, of longing, of possibility finally made real. I was home.